In today's video, we're going to be building these super simple work supports. It's comprised of all plywood with a simple dado down the middle and just affixed to the bottom with screws to keep it rock solid. These are great work supports for the job site or in the workshop to do finishing work or glue ups, and we're going to build the whole thing right here on my MFT workstation. All right, let's get started. All right, everybody, so before we get started, here's just a little disclaimer. I am not sponsored by Festool or any of the tools that you're going to see me use today. These are just tools that I'm using all the time, and I want to take you through my whole process of how I use these in the shop and out in the field. So I want to get you involved in my whole process of the learning curve and adding these tools into my tool arsenal, if you want to call it that. So basically, these will just always go with me out on the job, and I can set them up here in the garage and have a lot more room than I have in the other side of the basement shop. So today I'm going to be using the MFT to cross cut and rip these boards to make those work supports. After I'm done cutting everything up to the sizes that I need, I'm going to be setting up the Festool router also, which is the OF1400, which I told you about, that has the system for the LR32, which makes the shelf pins and everything like that. We're not doing that today, but we are going to use a rail stop for the router, and the router is going to ride along this track, and I'm going to make dados in the plywood here, and what that's going to do is allow me to make the channel to slip in the top of the work support, and then we could screw it in from the bottom, and then this way these things will be rock solid. What I'm going to be doing is setting those up along the floor, or sometimes I can use them along, on the top of a table, and set the workpiece down on top of it, and that allows me to either get clamps underneath when I'm gluing something up, or when I'm doing some finishing, I don't have the flat part of the work material sitting flat on the table or floor. I'm able to get either the brush, or when I spray it, it goes all the way to the end. All right, so let's square up these boards, cut them to the size we need, and then start routing the grooves. All right, so the first thing I need to do is rip a straight edge as a reference point on these boards. Now, I have the boards cut already, and they just have the factory edge on one side. But what I want to do is just rip off a straight line on each side. Now, I could put this board, because it's short enough to go in this way, and rip it, but if it wasn't, like that board is longer, I could also take it, put it here, and then just rip a straight line. But I'm going to do a rough cross cut first, because I only need these boards to be 15 inches long. This board right here is 25. So first I'm going to make a mark at 16. Come down here, and we can set up a stop block, which I have right here on the back fence. So let's first cut them down smaller. I'm just going to flip this around here like this. Now, I'm not referencing off the fence right now, so this is just to get the pieces small enough where I can rip the edge. So this is just a rough cross cut right now. So all I need to do is put my marks on the line and make the cut. Okay, so now that I have a reference edge, I'm just going to mark the board of where I made that cut. So I know that this is now going to go up against the fence. Now I can position this up against the fence and give myself a 90-degree cut line on both pieces. So these are both going to get cut with the reference edge against the fence. So turn on the vacuum, slide my piece in. Now, you don't have to just slide it underneath every time. This actually lifts up out of the way, and you can position the piece wherever you need by the cut line, but I have it set where it just slightly fits underneath. If I wanted to, I could just pull one of these clamps out, feed it in here, and I know that's locked in. It's not going anywhere. We don't need to do that, but Just giving you a little demonstration. So now I know that this is my 90-degree corner. Now if I've set this up completely 90 degrees to each other using a really known good square. So I'm going to take this, just put it off to the side. Again, my reference edge is going along there, and I'm just going to slide this under and just cut off just enough. Now I want to cut these strips to 3.5 inches wide. So I'm going to lay everything out with the square at 3.5. 3.5 and 3.5 is 7. So come over here and I'm going to mark this out at 7. And 3.5 would be 10.5. Okay, so now what I want to do is, for each one, I want to find the center point of where I'm going to make the dado. 1 3/4 and 1 3/4 will be 3.5. So for the center here, I'm going to go 1 3/4, and I'm going to strike a line here on this side. And I'll bring it down to the end of the board. Now I have a reference point on both sides of the center line for my dado. My center line there. I'm going to make a mark here so I know that these are the dados. And so these are my marks. This will be the base, and this will be where we route the dado. The base, the dado, base, and the dado. Okay, you can see I have quite a few things going here on the table. I have the OF 1400 router, and these are the rail stops that connect to the rails. And just like that, they ride along the rails. So you see how this has lateral tolerance? It's just like a track saw. We have to take that out. So basically what you're going to do is turn it upside down so that you can see these tabs in here. And you're going to turn the screws until they touch those tabs. Put it back on. Position these. Alright, I'm going to offset those a little bit and tighten these down. I check the lateral tolerance again and make sure we're good. Now, the router, loosen that up. Okay, so we're going to rest this right there on the rail, and then with this one knob here, we're going to tighten it down. This might be a better angle for you. You see how it tips a little bit? We have here a support. So what I'm going to do is press down and firmly hold the router here so it's level. Press down here, make sure it's engaged, and then I'm going to tighten that up. And now we have no more wobble. And now I'm going to just check and see how we're gliding along the rail perfectly. Okay, so that's good. Next thing we want to do now is we need to adjust the router bit. So the first thing we got to do is obviously install a router bit, and that's going to be a 23/32 router bit because we're using plywood here, and so the dados need to be fitted for the plywood, and the plywood is undersized. It's not 3/4. Okay, so check this out. I've turned the router upside down here so you can see. This is a ratcheting button. It's not like other routers where you get the knuckle buster where you have to use 2 wrenches and crank it and then you bust your knuckles up. This one here, you put your router bit in. Okay, and now I'm going to press on this green button here, if you can see that. I'm going to hold this button in, and as I hold that button down, tighten up the collar in a ratcheting motion. You hear that clicking? That's it, it's tight. No 2 wrenches, no having to remove them and spin them off. So now I'm going to set my rail stop back on. My tolerance is good. Now, before I set it up to where I need to be, I'm going to set the depth. And I want to show you how easy it is to set the depth. I have a 5mm domino here because I know that it's 5mm thick. I want to plunge down 5mm into this wood to make the dado. So the first thing I'm going to do is loosen the plunger up right here. I'm going to plunge down, and my bit is hitting the wood. I'm zeroed out right now. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to loosen up my depth stop. All right, so I'm bottoming out. I'm on the wood, depth gauge, bottom out. I'm going to take the 5mm domino. I'm going to raise up the depth rod, the plunge stop, whatever you want to call it. And I'm just going to push down onto that domino, and now I'm going to lock it in place. Okay, now remove the domino. And now, you see that 5mm gap? I'll let this go. When I plunge down now, that's going to plunge the rest of the way down to that stop, and I'm going to plunge in exactly 5mm like I wanted to. Now I want to set up where I'm going to cut my dados. So I'm going to put my good square edge along the fence in the back. I'm going to slide the wood in. And now what I'm going to do is get a sacrificial piece that's the same size as this, so that it won't tip over while I make the first cut. And I'm going to just start to line up, making sure I'm still in line with the back fence. And I'm just going to start to line up this with my center line on the router. I have one in the back and one in the front. All right, so check this out. This is cool. So now my dust collection just slips into these two tabs right here. Press it down, lock it in place, close that little window so it surrounds the bit completely, and the bit has no way to hit it, which is perfect. And now I'm going to hook up the dust collection hose to it. That's my dust collection. All right, let's power this up. Now I have this set up on a vac switch for dust collection. So as I cycle on the router, the vacuum will automatically come on. So now I'm just going to back up the router so that I'm just behind the workpiece. I'm going to put on 5.5, 6, and I'm going to place my hand on the side here, turn on the router. And I'm going to set my stop block. I'm going to set this to 15 just by putting my tape measure right up against my splinter guard. That's where my cut line is going to be, and locking it in place. And I'll take the first one here like this. I'll make that cut, and then I will cut the whole pieces in one shot. Okay, so check this out. What I've done is, since I need to cut these pieces really small, which is 3.5 inches, can't do it like this against the fence once I get here to this other part. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to butt it up against this stop rail that I made, that I've positioned exactly three and a half inches away from my guide rail. So now all I gotta do, butt it up against the rail and make the cut. So all the dados are cut. All the support pieces that will go into the dados are cut. So now here's a little pro tip. I'm going to be screwing these together. I want to make sure that my screw is dead center in that dado. So what you can do is just hold the piece towards you with the dado facing up. We're going to put 4 screws in each. Well, we could put 3 in here. I'm just going to take my countersink drill bit And from the top, I'm just going to drill just until I get through the board, not countersinking on this side. As soon as I come through the other side, you see I have a hole there? Now I can drill through there and countersink the holes on this side, and they'll land exactly in the center of the dado. Now, I'm not even going to use glue for these because they're just work supports and I don't need them to be that structurally strong. So I'm going to just tap them in place. That's seated. There you go. Work support. Now we'll just do the same to the other four. Then we'll be done. Now I'm probably going to put a little bit of a chamfer on the edge here, just so it's not so square, get a little bit of a point. But the general idea is to have these on the floor or a table like this on a work surface. And here's the piece we're working on. We're going to put a finish on it. We're going to put a round over. We put it there. We have to glue it up, two pieces together. I can get a clamp in here from the bottom, clamp it up while it's being glued. And that's the whole purpose of this right here. So, super simple build, very effective. I'm going to be using these at the job site. You'll see when I join the beams together for the ceiling and the post and everything like that. I'm going to have them laid out on the floor. The beams will sit on top of these so that I can, when I do the glue up, I can join them together and blend in with the wire wheel that seam so that it's completely invisible. And then we're going to leave it on those supports to glue up, and then I'll be able to do the staining process and the spraying of the finish there on site. So super simple. I just want to show you how clean and perfect everything went together here. I mean, like, I've had routers in the past that I've run dados with. I've run them with the table saw with the dado blade, and they really haven't come out this perfect before. And everything is just so, like, even the cuts are absolutely clean, which I get great cuts. You can do this on a table saw. You can do this with a contractor saw, a big sliding table saw. You can do it with a regular cabinet saw. You can do it with your track saw. You can do it with a circular saw, with a straight edge guide, anything like that. You know, same thing with the router. When you're doing the dados, you don't need any of these specific tools, but I am showing you the process of me integrating these into my tool arsenal. So I want to take you with me on the journey here of building this arsenal up, because the Festool system, it does help me out. I have the Domino now for over 3 years and I love it, and that thing has made my life so much easier, and it's worth its weight in gold. Now, I'm not sponsored by Festool at all. They have no idea that I even exist or have a channel or anything like that. So I'm not trying to sell you any of these tools. I will have links if you do choose to purchase any of these tools, so that you know where to get them, how much to pay for them, and all that. So don't forget to hit the subscribe button. We got a lot more to do. We got to get out in the field there and join those beams together. The barn beams, we got to install them. There's going to be scribing along the ceiling to give it a better fit, because you know sheetrock is never perfect, and the ceilings, the joists, everything is never perfect. So we're going to have to scribe those and cut those, and I'll show you that process. I'll show you the glue up process. I'll show the installation process, and then we're going to move on. We have barn doors to do in there. We have floating shelves to do in there. We have built-ins, and that's where this is really, all this whole system is going to come into play, is when I'm there doing the built-ins on site and the barn doors. And some of the barn doors I'll have to do here because I'm going to have to mill the lumber on the joiner and all that. So there's a whole series of videos coming, so definitely stay tuned for that. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you give the video a thumbs up if you like it. Definitely hit the picture of a notification bell that will notify you every time I upload a video, and make sure you come back to join me next time. All right, guys, again, thanks for joining me in my shop. Next time, join me out in the field.